He returned home to dazzle his parents with a life of overflowing success, but what he found at the gate of his own mansion left him frozen. Two elderly figures, shivering in the harmattan chill, were being cast aside like rubbish. He never imagined that this sight would plunge him into an abyss of guilt he could never escape. The sleek, black SUV pulled up to the Lekki mansion just as the sun began to dip behind the horizon. Obinna Okoro stepped out with a triumphant smile, adjusting his designer blazer while admiring the imposing three-story villa that was now his. He had planned this moment for months, to surprise his parents, to show them that their son had finally achieved the wealth they had always dreamt of. But as his eyes fell on the side entrance of the property, his smile froze, stiff as the morning dew. Two figures sat on the bare concrete, huddled under a worn-out Ankara fabric that barely protected them from the biting wind. An elderly man held a woman with silver-gray hair, both trembling. Beside them were two battered leather suitcases and a carton containing old, faded photographs peeking out from the edges. They looked discarded, like refuse on that cold evening. Obinna felt something break deep within his chest when he recognized those faces. They were his parents. Pa Jeremiah and Ma Ifeoma, the people who had given him life, were sitting there like beggars in front of the house he had bought to impress his fiancée, the house where he had never told them he lived. "Papa, Mama," Obinna shouted, running toward them with a shattered heart. "What are you doing here? Good God, you are freezing." Pa Jeremiah looked up, his weary eyes brimming with unshed tears. They met his son's gaze. There was no reproach in that look, only an infinite sadness that pierced Obinna like a knife. "My son," the old man murmured with a broken voice, "we didn't want to disturb you. Vicente told us you lived here, but the young lady who came out told us we couldn't enter, that this house was no place for people like us." Obinna felt the ground opening beneath his feet. He knelt before them, taking his mother's cold, calloused hands in his. Ma Ifeoma looked at him with those eyes that had once viewed him with infinite pride, but now only reflected shame and pain. "Forgive us, my son," she whispered, her voice cracking. "We didn't want to embarrass you in front of your people. We are leaving now. Vicente will come for us soon." "Embarrass me?" Obinna felt tears burning his cheeks. "You could never embarrass me. Who did this to you? Who threw you out?" The main door of the mansion swung open with a sharp thud. Chidinma Salazar appeared on the threshold, draped in a shimmering golden-laced gown. Her face displayed an expression of absolute annoyance, as if the presence of those elders were a stain on her perfect party. "Obinna, what are you doing out there?" she asked, her voice cold. "The guests are waiting. We are announcing our engagement tonight, remember?" Obinna stood slowly, his parents still trembling behind him. Fury began to boil in his gut, mixing with a suffocating guilt. "Chidinma, was it you? You threw my parents out to the street?" She let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Your parents, Obinna? Two ragged elders who came to the door begging to speak with you? I told them this mansion is not a refugee camp. How was I supposed to know who they were?" She paused, looking at them with disdain. "Though, seeing them now, I understand why you never mentioned them. They don't exactly fit the image we've built, do they?" The silence that followed was deafening. Several guests had stepped out, drawn by the commotion. Men and women in impeccable agbada and suits watched the scene with expressions ranging from surprise to thinly veiled mockery. Obinna heard the whispers spreading like wildfire. "Poor old folks. Those are his parents? What a shame. I didn't know Montero came from the trenches." Pa Jeremiah tried to stand, swaying. Obinna rushed to hold him, but his father stopped him with a trembling hand. "No, my child. We have caused enough trouble. Your mother and I will go. You have your life, your people. We didn't come to ruin anything. You are going nowhere." Obinna's voice boomed through the cold air, filled with a rage he had never felt. "This is your home as much as it is mine." Chidinma descended the steps with calculated strides, her heels clicking against the stone. She crossed her arms, looking at Obinna with a mix of disappointment and absolute coldness. "Obinna, don't be ridiculous. Think about what you are doing. All our investors are inside. The contract with the Ojukwu conglomerate is about to be signed. Are you really going to ruin everything for them?" Obinna interrupted her, his voice trembling with emotion. "Are you listening to yourself, Chidinma? Do you realize what you've just done?" "What I did was protect our reputation," she replied, unmoved. "You and I are building an empire. We cannot afford sentimental weaknesses. I thought you understood that." Ma Ifeoma began to cry silently, covering her face with her hands. Pa Jeremiah held her tightly, as if he could shield her from the entire world. Obinna felt something break definitively as he saw his parents humiliated, cold, and destroyed in front of the house he had bought with money he had earned while forgetting them. "I worked my entire life," Pa Jeremiah said suddenly, his voice firm despite the pain. "I was a site laborer, a carrier, whatever was necessary so this boy could go to school. His mother sewed until dawn to pay for his books. We never had much, but we always had our dignity. And now," his voice broke, "I discover that my son is ashamed of us. Isn't that so?" Obinna fell to his knees before his father. "Papa, Then why did you never come to see us, my child?" His mother's question was a whisper laden with years of pain. "Why did you stop calling? Why, when Vicente looked for you, did you always say you were busy?" Obinna had no answer. Words choked in his throat while memories hit him like waves. The ignored calls, the empty excuses, the broken promises to visit soon. He had convinced himself he was building a better future, that when he had enough success, he would return for them and give them everything they deserved. But the truth was darker and simpler. He had been ashamed. Ashamed of his humble origin in the village. Ashamed of the mud brick house where he grew up. Ashamed of his father's calloused hands and his mother's simple, unpolished speech. He had traded the two people who loved him unconditionally for a world that only accepted him for his money. "Oga Obinna," a raspy voice interrupted the moment. An older man in a worn-out work overall approached from the street, carrying a steaming thermos. "I brought hot tea for Pa Jeremiah and Ma Ifeoma. I couldn't leave them out here any longer." It was Vicente, his parents' old, trusted farmhand, now their only real support. The man who had helped raise chickens in their small backyard, who had taught Obinna to ride a bicycle, who never stopped calling him "my little son," no matter how much money he had. Vicente looked at Obinna with a mix of disappointment and sadness that hurt more than any reproach. "Pa Jeremiah told me about you weeks ago, young Obinna. He said he wanted to see you, that he needed to tell you something important. I tried to reach you. I left messages, but you were always in meetings, on trips, in important dinners." Obinna felt the world stop. "Papa needed to see me. Why? What happened?" Pa Jeremiah looked away, but Ma Ifeoma spoke with a trembling voice. "The doctors said his heart is very weak, my son, that he doesn't have much time left. That's why we wanted to see you one last time. We just wanted to say goodbye." The scream that escaped Obinna was a primal, heartbreaking sound. He clung to his father like a lost child, sobbing uncontrollably while the guests watched the scene with stony faces. Some muttered, others looked away uncomfortably, but Chidinma remained motionless on the steps, her arms still crossed, without a shred of compassion on her perfectly made-up face. "I didn't know," Obinna cried. "Papa, I didn't know. Forgive me. Please, forgive me." Pa Jeremiah stroked his son's head with trembling hands. "There is nothing to forgive, my child. You chose your path, and that is fine. We just wanted to see you one last time before I go. That is all." Vicente helped the elders to their feet. Pa Jeremiah swayed, and Obinna held him tightly, feeling how fragile the body which had once seemed invincible to him had become. "I will take them back home," Vicente said softly. "They have been in the cold long enough." "No," Obinna intervened. "They are staying here. This is their home now." Chidinma descended the last steps, her patience finally exhausted. "Obinna, listen to me carefully. If those people enter this house, I am leaving. And not just me, the Ojukwu family, our business partners, the entire empire we've built. You will have to choose, your past of poverty or our future of success." The silence was absolute. Even the wind seemed to stop. All eyes were on Obinna, waiting for his decision. His father looked at him with teary eyes, yet with understanding, as if he already knew the answer. His mother squeezed Pa Jeremiah's hand, preparing for another disappointment. Obinna looked at Chidinma, then at his parents, and in that moment, something that had been dormant inside him finally awakened. "Vicente," he said with a firm voice, wiping his tears, "take my parents inside, to the master suite. Have them prepare the most comfortable room in the house." "Obinna," Chidinma began, her voice menacing. "You," he interrupted, looking at her with eyes that, for the first time, saw clearly. "You can stay or go, but let me tell you something. I built an empire on the backs of two people who sacrificed everything for me, and for years I pretended they didn't exist because I was ashamed of where I came from. Tonight, I found my sick father sitting in the cold, and if that doesn't break your heart, then you are not the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with." A murmur ran through the guests. Chidinma paled, incredulous. "Are you leaving me for them?" "I am not leaving you for them. Obina replied. I am leaving you because I discovered that the man I became with you is someone I don't recognize, someone who left his parents in the street, and that is not the man I want to be. Chidinma stepped back, her eyes burning with rage. You will regret this, Obina Okoro. I swear to you, he replied. She turned on her heels and entered the house with furious steps. The guests began to disperse, some avoiding Obina's gaze, others whispering to each other. In minutes, the mansion was nearly empty, leaving only the echo of slamming doors and engines starting. Obina knelt before his parents one last time that night. Forgive me, please. I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Pa Jeremiah smiled weakly, stroking his son's face. You already have, my son. You already have. Vicente helped the elders inside. Obina followed, closing the door behind him, but in the silence of that chilly night, a question began to hammer in his mind. Why had Vicente said he tried to reach him for weeks, when he had never received a single message? And more importantly, who had made sure those messages never arrived? The days that followed were like waking from a nightmare only to discover that the reality was even worse. Obina had transformed his life completely. He cancelled key meetings, ignored calls from furious partners, and turned his mansion into a sanctuary for his. But every smile he managed to draw from Maifeoma, every moment of peace beside Pa Jeremiah, came accompanied by a guilt that devoured him from within like a slow poison. On the morning of the third day, while preparing breakfast in a kitchen he had never used, he heard weak footsteps coming down the stairs. Pa Jeremiah appeared at the entrance, leaning on a walking stick that Vicente had procured. His pale face showed the effort that simple act of coming downstairs had cost him. Papa, you should be resting, Obina said quickly, leaving the pan and rushing to support him. I have rested too much in my life, my child, the old man replied with a tired smile. Now I want to live every minute I have left, especially these ones with you. They sat together at the dining table, an Italian marble table Obina had once bought to impress guests who never returned after that night. Pa Jeremiah observed the house with eyes that seemed to see much more than Obina wanted to show. It is a beautiful house, my son, but it feels empty, as if no one has ever truly lived here. The words fell upon Obina like stones. He was right. He had filled the mansion with expensive objects, with art he didn't understand, with furniture he never used, but he had never made it a home. Papa, Obina began, his voice breaking, I need to ask you something. Vicente said he tried to contact me, that he called weeks ago to say you were sick, but I never received any messages, calls, or emails. Nothing. Pa Jeremiah took a slow sip of tea, his hands trembling slightly. Vicente showed me the call logs on his phone. He called your office 14 times in 3 weeks. They always told him you were busy, that they would pass the message, but you never returned the calls. That is impossible. Obina felt his blood turn cold. My assistant always passes all my messages. All of them. Your assistant? Pa Jeremiah asked. What is her name? Monica Herrera. She has been working with me for 3 years. She is completely reliable. The old man nodded slowly, but something in his gaze suggested he knew more than he was saying. My son, in these days here, I have seen things. I have heard conversations that perhaps I shouldn't have heard, and there is something you need to know about the night we arrived. Obina leaned forward, his heart beating with force. What is it, Papa? Before Pa Jeremiah could respond, the front door swung open with a bang. Chidinma entered with furious steps, followed by 2 men in suits that Obina immediately recognized. Ricardo Ojukwu and his son Javier, the most important partners in his company. Obina, we need to talk, now, Chidinma ordered, ignoring Pa Jeremiah's presence entirely. This is not a good time, Obina replied, standing up. I am with my father. Ricardo Ojukwu stepped forward, his usually friendly face transformed into a mask of severity. Okoro, the board of directors met last night. Your behavior was unacceptable. You humiliated Chidinma in front of key investors. The merger contract with our companies is suspended until further notice. And not just that, Javier added, crossing his arms. Several clients are pulling their accounts. They say they cannot trust someone so emotionally unstable. Obina felt rage boiling inside. Unstable? I defended my parents from an act of cruelty. If that is instability, then I don't want to be part of your world. Chidinma let out a bitter laugh. Your world no longer exists, Obina. I reviewed the numbers this morning. Without the Ojukwu contract, your company loses 70% of its revenue. In 3 months, you will be bankrupt. Then I will be bankrupt, he replied, surprising himself with the firmness of his voice. But I won't be alone. How touching, Chidinma said with sarcasm. The successful businessman renounces everything for his elderly parents. It's almost poetic, a pity that poetry doesn't pay mortgages. Pa Jeremiah stood with effort, leaning on the table. His voice, though weak, resonated with an authority that surprised everyone. Young lady, I don't know what kind of person you are, but I will tell you something. I have lived many years with nothing but the love of my family, and I have seen rich men die completely alone, surrounded by luxury, but with no one to mourn their departure. My son chose love over money, and that is the only real wealth that exists. The silence that followed was absolute. Chidinma paled but quickly recomposed her mask of coldness. Nice speech, but speeches don't feed you. She turned toward Obinna. You have 48 hours to reconsider, or you lose everything. The three left, leaving a trail of expensive perfume and veiled threats. Obinna helped his father sit down again, noticing how he trembled from the effort that small act of bravery had cost him. Papa, you shouldn't have. Someone had to say it, Pa Jeremiah interrupted. That woman has poison in her heart, my son. And what I was going to tell you before they arrived is important. The night we arrived, before they threw us out, I heard Chidinma talking on the phone in the study. She thought we were asleep in the waiting area where the butler left us. What did you hear, Papa? He took a deep breath, as if the words cost him physical pain. She was telling someone named Love that everything was going according to plan, that soon you would have to choose between us and your company, and that when you chose wrong as she expected, she would finally have total control of your firm. Obinna felt the floor moving beneath his feet. That doesn't make sense. Chidinma doesn't have access to my company. We are only partners on a few projects. But, my son, Pa Jeremiah's voice broke. She also said something else. She said, Monica did a perfect job blocking the calls from that annoying old man. He never knew his father was sick until it was too late to do anything that wouldn't make him look like the villain. Obinna's world collapsed in that instant. Monica, his trusted assistant for 3 years, the woman who managed his schedule, filtered his calls, had access to all his emails. She had been the invisible hand that kept him away from his parents, even when they desperately needed him. Why? Obinna whispered. Why would she do that? Pa Jeremiah placed a trembling hand on his son's. Because someone asked her to, or paid her to, and I think we both know who. Before Obinna could respond, Vicente ran into the kitchen with a face unhinged by terror. Oga Obinna, ma ifeoma, fell upstairs. She cannot get up. Obinna climbed the stairs 3 at a time, his heart hammering against his chest. He found his mother on the hallway floor, clutching a manila envelope with trembling hands. Her face was pale, and tears ran down her wrinkled cheeks. Mama, what happened? Obinna knelt beside her, helping her sit against the wall. Ma Ifeoma lifted the envelope with shaking hands. Her voice came out as a broken whisper. My son, I went into your study looking for a book for your papa, and I found this. Forgive me, I didn't want to pry, but when I saw the photos, I couldn't. With clumsy hands, Obinna opened the envelope. His world crumbled for the second time that morning. Photographs. Chidinma kissing Javier Ojukwu at a hotel, Chidinma signing documents at a law office, and a prenuptial agreement that froze his blood. In the event of a divorce or separation, Chidinma would be entitled to 50% of all of Obinna Okoro's properties and companies. But what devastated him completely was the date of the contract. It had been signed 6 months before he proposed to her. Everything had been a trap from the beginning. My son, Ma Ifeoma whispered with a voice broken by pain, that woman never loved you. She only wanted your money, and when she saw that we could make you reject her, she decided to use our love against you. She turned us into a weapon to destroy you. Obinna helped his mother to her feet, holding her as she clung to him, as if he were the only solid thing in a world that was falling apart. Vicente arrived, running with a glass of water, his face reflecting the concern of a father for his son. Pa Jeremiah appeared in the hall, panting from the effort of climbing the stairs. Seeing the photos on the floor, his expression darkened with a mix of rage and sadness. Papa, you have to rest, Obinna pleaded, guiding both parents toward the master suite. I will rest when you are safe, the old man replied with obstinacy. My son, listen to me. That woman set a trap for you, but traps work both ways. If she has secrets, you can find them and use them to protect yourself. I am not like her, Papa. I don't play dirty. Ma Ifeoma took her son's face between her hands, forcing him to look her in the eyes. It's not about playing dirty, my son. It's about justice, about preventing her from destroying more people. Child of my soul, if there is something I learned in my life, it is this. Silence in the face of evil is complicity. You cannot let her get away with it. Obinna looked at his fragile, elderly, sick parents, And yet, they were stronger than he had ever been, because they understood something he had forgotten in his race for success, that true strength does not come from power or money, but from integrity and love. "All right," he said finally, "but we will do it the right way. No revenge, only truth." That night, while his parents slept in the master suite, Obina sat in his study with Vicente. The older man had been a silent witness to the whole story, observing from the shadows as the boy he helped raise got lost in a world of ambition and betrayal. "Vicente, I need your help. I need to know everything you saw, everything you heard. Every detail counts." The man nodded slowly, taking a folded paper from his pocket. "There is something else Pa Jeremiah didn't tell you, young man. The night we arrived, I heard Miss Chidinma talking to someone else besides the one she called Love, a man. She told him that you were the final obstacle to something big, and that once she had you under control or out of play, the real project could begin." "Real project? What project?" Vicente handed him the folded paper. "I wrote down the name she mentioned, something about investments in South America. Operation Butterfly, she called it. She said that with your signature, or without it, that money would leave the country before the end of the year." Obina felt his blood freeze. Operation Butterfly. He recognized that name from documents Chidinma had asked him to sign weeks ago, telling him they were just routine company expansions, documents he had signed without reviewing, trusting blindly in the woman he thought he loved. What had he really signed, and what else was Chidinma planning with his money, his name, his company? Obina stood and walked to the window, watching the starry night. Somewhere in that city, Chidinma believed she had defeated him, that she had isolated, ruined, and destroyed him. She didn't know that the only thing she had managed to do was wake him up. "Vicente," Obina said without turning around, "tomorrow morning we go to the office. You, me, and a lawyer who is smarter than all of them combined. It is time to discover what Operation Butterfly really is, and who else is involved." "Yes, Olga. And Vicente, thank you for never giving up on my parents, for continuing to try to contact me even when it seemed I had forgotten about you completely." The older man smiled sadly. "A father never gives up on his children, Olga Obina. And although I am not your father by blood, I saw you grow up. For me, you will always be that little boy who ran barefoot through the yard chasing chickens. Children, even when they get lost, can always find their way home." Obina felt tears burning his eyes again. He had spent years building walls around his heart, believing that hardness was strength, that coldness was power. But in 3 days, his parents and Vicente had taught him more about true strength than all his years of business success. Now, only one question remained. Would he be in time to save what Chidinma was destroying? And more importantly, would he discover the truth before it was too late for his father? Because while Obina planned his next move, upstairs, Pa Jeremiah was suffocating as he breathed, pressing a handkerchief against his mouth while his wife slept beside him, unaware that her husband's time was running out much faster than her son imagined. Life has mysterious ways of pushing people toward the truth, and sometimes that truth arrives just when time is running out. The following morning dawned with a strange silence in the mansion. Obina woke up on the study sofa, surrounded by documents he had been reviewing until dawn. Every paper he found about Operation Butterfly was like discovering another stab-in-the-back transfers authorized with his signature. Accounts in tax havens, phantom investments in companies that didn't even exist. Chidinma hadn't just planned to steal from him. She had planned to destroy him completely. The aroma of freshly brewed tea drew him from his thoughts. He followed the scent to the kitchen, and what he saw left him paralyzed in the doorway. Ma Ifioma was in front of the stove, preparing traditional bean cakes, moin moin, and pap ogi, by hand, just as she used to do in the humble house where Obina had grown up. Her wrinkled hands worked the batter with movements that spoke of decades of practice, of dawns, waking before the sun to prepare breakfast for her family. Vicente was sitting at the table peeling oranges for fresh juice, and Pa Jeremiah observed his wife with a smile that mixed love and nostalgia. "Mama," Obina whispered from the door, "you didn't have to do this." Ma Ifioma turned, wiping her hands on the apron she had found in some forgotten drawer. "Oh, my son, a mother always cares for her children. It doesn't matter if they are in a mud hut or a palace. Love is served on the plate. It is cooked with the heart." Obina felt the tears threatening to fall again. He approached and hugged his mother from behind, resting his head on her shoulder as he did when he was a child, and the world seemed too big for him. "Forgive me, Mama, for all the breakfasts I wasn't there for all the mornings you spent alone waiting for me to call." Ma Ifeoma turned and took her son's face between her hands covered in flour. "Child of my soul, don't say that," Obina interrupted, his voice breaking. "Papa is going to be fine. We are going to find the best doctors, the best treatments." Pa Jeremiah coughed softly from the table, and for a moment, Obina noticed how his father discreetly brought his handkerchief to his mouth. There was something in that gesture that froze his blood, but before he could ask, Vicente spoke. "Oga Obina, there is something you must know. Last night, after you fell asleep in the study, I received a call. It was Monica, your assistant." Obina felt all his muscles tense. "Monica called you? Why?" Vicente exchanged a look with Pa Jeremiah before answering. "She said she needed to talk to you urgently, that she had information about Miss Chidinma that could help you, but that she couldn't do it over the phone, that she was afraid they were watching her." "It's a trap," Obina said immediately. "Monica worked with Chidinma to keep me away from you. I cannot trust her. Perhaps," Pa Jeremiah spoke with a weak but firm voice, "or perhaps she realized she was on the wrong side. My son, people can change. Sometimes, when they see the consequences of their actions, they wake up." Ma Ifeoma placed a plate of hot food before Obina, along with stewed beans that smelled exactly like those of his childhood. She sat beside him, taking his hand. "When you were little, my son, there was a neighbor who made our life impossible. Doña Refugio was her name. She criticized us because we were poor, because your father worked with his hands. She said you would never amount to anything because you came from nothing." Obina listened, biting into the food that tasted like all the memories he had tried to bury. "One day," his mother continued, "Doña Refugio's son had a terrible accident. They needed money for the hospital, but she had fought with everyone in the neighborhood. No one wanted to help her. And do you know who went to her house with all the money we had saved?" "Papa," Obina whispered, looking at his father. Pa Jeremiah nodded. "I gave her everything we had. Because a parent's pain is the pain of all parents. And because holding a grudge is like taking poison, hoping the other person dies. Doña Refugio cried in my arms that day, and from then on, she was the first to defend our family when others spoke ill of us. People can change, my son," Ma Ifeoma repeated. "If Monica wants to talk, perhaps you should listen, but with care, with much care." Obina finished his breakfast in silence, feeling the weight of the decision. Finally, he took his phone and dialed Monica's number. She answered on the first ring. Her voice sounded scared. "Mr. Okoro, thank you for calling. I need to see you. There are things you don't know, terrible things Miss Salazar is planning." "Why should I believe you, Monica? You blocked my father's calls. You kept me away from him when I needed him most." There was a long silence. When Monica spoke again, she was crying. "Because they paid me. They paid me a lot of money to do it, and I needed that money for my sister's surgery. But then I saw your parents in the snow that night. I saw them trembling from the cold, and I realized I had become the type of person I always swore I would never be." Obina closed his eyes, feeling a mix of rage and something that could be compassion. "Where do you want to meet?" "At the Park Cafe at 2. But come alone, Mr. Okoro. If Chidinma knows I am talking to you," her voice broke, "I don't know what she is capable of." The call ended. Obina looked at his parents and Vicente, seeking in their faces some sign of what to do. "Go, my son," said Pa Jeremiah. "But take Vicente with you. Let him stay close, watching, and if something feels wrong, you leave there immediately." The hours until 2 p.m. passed like centuries. Obina tried to distract himself by reviewing more documents, but his mind kept spinning. What if it's a trap? What if Chidinma is using Monica to lure him into another ambush? But there was also the possibility that Monica really had information that could help him, information that could protect his parents and save what remained of his company. At 2 o'clock sharp, Obina entered the Park Cafe. It was a small place, far from the city center, the type of place where people from his former social circle would never set foot. Monica was sitting at a table in the back, wearing dark sunglasses despite being indoors. She seemed to have aged 10 years in a week. "Mr. Okoro," she said when he sat down. "Thank you for coming. You have 5 minutes," Obina replied coldly. "And it better be true what you have to say." Monica took off her glasses. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying so much. "Operation Butterfly is not just a financial fraud, sir. It is much worse. Chidinma is using your company as a front to launder money for criminal organizations from South America. The signatures you put on those documents make you a legal accomplice to everything." Obina felt the world stop. "That is impossible." "I reviewed." He stopped, realizing the truth. "There is more." Monica took a USB memory stick from her purse. "Here is all the proof. Emails, transfers, recorded conversations, everything you need to prove that you were deceived. But there is also something else. Something about your father. Obina's heart stopped. What about my father? Monica swallowed, her hands trembling. Chidinma investigated his medical history months ago. She knew from the beginning that Pa Jeremiah was sick and used it. She planned everything so you would discover the truth at the worst possible moment, when your father was so weak that, her voice broke, when it was too late to do anything other than feel guilty. Obina stood abruptly, knocking over the chair. The rage he felt was like liquid fire in his veins. There is more, Monica interrupted. Your father needs an expensive, very expensive experimental treatment, and Chidinma made sure to freeze all your main accounts. Without the Ojukwu contract, you have no liquidity to pay for it. How do you know all this? Because I was the one who managed your financial schedule, Mr. Okoro. I saw everything, I heard everything, and I stayed silent because they paid me to do it. The tears ran freely down her face. But I cannot continue living like this. My sister was saved thanks to the money they gave me. How can I enjoy her life knowing I helped destroy yours? Obina took the USB drive with trembling hands. In that small device was all the truth. Free. Everything he needed to stop Chidinma. But there was also the most painful truth, that he had lost valuable years with his father, chasing success built on lies. And now, when he had finally opened his eyes, time was running out. There is something else you must know, Monica said in a low voice. Javier Ojukwu is not Chidinma's lover. He is her partner. The real lover is someone much closer to you, someone you trusted completely. Who? Before Monica could answer, the cafe door burst open. 3 men entered, their faces partially hidden by caps. Monica paled. Run, she screamed. It's a trap. They followed me. Obina reacted by instinct. He grabbed Monica by the arm, and they ran toward the back exit. Vicente appeared out of nowhere, blocking one of the men with his body. The 3 burst into an alleyway, running while hearing shouts behind them. They didn't stop until they reached Vicente's car, taking off with the tires screeching. Obina looked back, his heart beating like a war drum. The men hadn't followed them, but the message was clear. Chidinma knew Monica had talked, and she wasn't going to let that information reach where it could hurt her. When they arrived at the mansion, Pa Jeremiah and Ma Ifeoma were waiting at the door, their faces pale with worry. Obina hugged his parents tightly, feeling how they trembled in his arms. I'm okay, Papa. We're okay. But it wasn't true. Nothing was okay. He had the proof to destroy Chidinma, but he also knew she wouldn't stop. And the most terrifying thing was that he still didn't know who the real traitor was, who had been close to him all this time, smiling to his face while stabbing him in the back. That night, while everyone slept, Obina sat beside his father's bed. Pa Jeremiah breathed with difficulty. Each inhalation was a visible effort. Obina took his hand, feeling it cold and fragile. Papa, I'm going to fix this. I promise you. I'm going to get that treatment. I'm going to save you. Pa Jeremiah opened his eyes slowly. He smiled with that tired smile, but full of love that only a father can give. You already saved me, my child. When you let me into your house, when you chose love over money, you already gave me everything I needed. Don't say that, Obina cried. There is still time. There is always time. But deep in his heart, Obina knew the truth. Time was the only enemy he couldn't defeat, and that enemy was winning. The following days were a race against the clock. Obina hired the best criminal defense lawyer in the city, a man named Gustavo Ramirez, who had a reputation for being ruthless with the corrupt. Together, they began to review every document on the USB drive Monica had delivered, building a case that would not only prove Obina's innocence, but would expose the entire web of crimes Chidinma had woven using his name. But while he worked day and night to save his company and his freedom, Obina saw his father consume himself a little more each day. Pa Jeremiah no longer came downstairs. He stayed in bed most of the time with Ma Ifeoma by his side, holding his hand, singing lullabies to him as if he were a child. One afternoon, while Obina was reviewing contracts in the study, Vicente entered with urgency on his face. Oga Obina, your papa is asking to see you. He says it's important. Obina ran up the stairs. He found his father sitting in bed, propped up on pillows. He looked tiny under the sheets, as if life itself were abandoning him slowly. But his eyes shone with a determination Obina hadn't seen in days. My son, sit down. There is something I need to tell you before it's too late. Papa, don't talk like that. The doctor said that. The doctor told me the truth that you don't want to hear. Pa Jeremiah interrupted gently. I have weeks, maybe days left. But before I go, You need to know who the real traitor is. Obinna felt the air leaving his lungs. You know who it is? How? Pa Jeremiah pointed toward the room's window, which overlooked the backyard garden. Yesterday afternoon, when everyone thought I was asleep, I heard voices in the garden. I peeked out and saw Chidinma talking to someone. They kissed, my child. And when that man turned around, I recognized him from the photos you have in your study. Obinna's heart beat so fast he felt it would explode. Who was it, Papa? Your partner, Rodrigo Fuentes, the man who helped you build your company from scratch, your best friend. Obinna felt as if his heart had been ripped from his chest. Rodrigo, his university friend, the man who had been by his side at every crucial moment of his career, the one who was supposedly on a business trip in Europe for the last few weeks. It can't be, Rodrigo whispered. Never. I'm sorry, son. Pa Jeremiah took Obinna's hand, but I heard what they said. Rodrigo was telling Chidinma that everything was going perfectly, that soon they would have total control of your company, and they could get married without anyone suspecting, that you would be so destroyed that you wouldn't even fight back. Ma Ifeoma entered the room with a tea tray. Seeing her son's destroyed face, she left everything on the side table and ran to hug him. Oh, my child. What happened? Obinna told her everything between sobs that embarrassed him but that he couldn't contain. His mother cradled him like when he was a child, whispering words of comfort that sounded like all the time she had healed his scraped knees and broken teenage hearts. Child of my heart, betrayal hurts more when it comes from whom we love, but it also teaches us who the real treasures in our life are. Look around you, my child. Your papa, Vicente, even Monica, who is trying to amend her mistake. Those are your true allies. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. Vicente poked his head in. His expression was grave. Olga Obinna, the lawyer Ramirez is downstairs. He says it's urgent. Obinna went downstairs, wiping his tears. Gustavo Ramirez was in the living room, surrounded by documents scattered all over the coffee table. His face showed a mix of triumph and worry. Obinna, we have everything we need to sink Chidinma Salazar. Fraud, money laundering, conspiracy. She will spend years in prison. But there is a problem. What problem? Rodrigo Fuentes. He got ahead of us. This morning he filed a lawsuit against you, alleging that you diverted company funds for personal use. He has fake documents, but very well made. And since he is the other majority partner, he has the power to freeze all your shares until the case is resolved. Obinna felt the world crumbling again. How long will it take to resolve? Months? Maybe a year. And by then, Gustavo didn't finish the sentence, but both knew what it meant. Pa Jeremiah didn't have months. He barely had weeks. There must be another way, Obinna said desperately. Some way to speed this up. Gustavo remained silent for a moment, thinking. Then he looked at Obinna with a serious expression. There is a way, but it is risky, and you will need nerves of steel. We have to make Chidinma and Rodrigo confess everything publicly, in a way they cannot retract. How? With a trap the same way they set one for you. During the following hours, Obinna, Gustavo, and Vicente planned every detail. Monica, who had been hiding in a cheap hotel, agreed to help when Obinna called her. She would be the key piece of the plan. 2 days later, Obinna sent a desperate message to Rodrigo. He needed to see him urgently. He was ready to sign everything necessary to end this. He just wanted peace to be with his father in his final days. Rodrigo agreed to meet that same night in the office they once shared as partners and friends. Obinna arrived early, accompanied only by Vicente, who remained hidden in the parking lot. What Rodrigo didn't know was that every corner of that office now had hidden cameras and microphones installed by a team of private investigators Gustavo had hired. When Rodrigo entered, he looked triumphant. He carried a portfolio full of documents ready for Obinna to sign his own destruction. Obinna, friend, I'm glad you've come to your senses, he said with a smile that no longer seemed friendly, but predatory. I had no choice, Obinna replied, forcing a defeated tone. My father is dying. I cannot fight this and be with him at the same time. You won. It's not personal, brother. Just business. Just business. Obinna let a bit of bitterness slip into his voice. We were friends since university. Rodrigo, I considered you my brother. Rodrigo shrugged, his mask of false friendship finally falling. Friendship doesn't pay the bills, Obinna, and you were too soft, too sentimental. When I met Chidinma at that conference 2 years ago, I saw the perfect opportunity. She needed your money. I needed your company. It was natural to partner up. Obinna felt nauseous, but he forced himself to continue. So, everything was a lie from the beginning? The engagement, the love, everything? Rodrigo smiled cruelly. Chidinma is an exceptional actress. And you were the perfect fool, so desperate to belong to that elite world that you never asked yourself why a woman like her would look at someone like you. Obinna clenched his fists under the table, but maintained his composure. He needed more. He needed Rodrigo to confess everything. And my parents? That was part of the plan too. Ah, that was genius. Rodrigo laughed. When Chidinma discovered your father was sick, she saw the perfect opportunity. We kept you away from them until the exact moment when you would be so devastated by guilt that you would make emotional decisions. And it worked. You broke up with Chidinma in front of everyone. You ruined your business relationships. You became the laughingstock of the industry. You are a monster, Obinna whispered. And this time, the emotion was genuine. I am a businessman, Rodrigo corrected. And now, if you sign these papers, we will let you live your final weeks in peace with your dear father. You can keep this little house and a fund sufficient to survive. The rest is ours. The office door opened. Chidinma entered with a victorious smile, followed by Javier Ojukwu and 2 other men. Obinna recognized as competitor lawyers. I see my dear ex-boyfriend finally came to his senses, Chidinma said, sitting next to Rodrigo and kissing him on the lips. How intelligent, Obinna. Finally, you did something intelligent. I just want this to end, Obinna said, reaching for the documents. Wait, Chidinma stopped him. First, I need you to admit something in front of all of us. That you were an idiot to reject me for 2 old people who didn't even value you while you were growing up. Say it, and we will sign. Obinna looked her in the eyes, and for the first time in weeks, he smiled. It was a calm, almost peaceful smile. No. What? Chidinma frowned. I said no. I am not going to sign anything, and I am not going to admit something that is not true. My parents valued me more than anyone in the world. They loved me when I had nothing, and they love me now that I've lost everything. That is something you will never understand. Rodrigo stood up, furious. You've gone crazy. You will sign those papers or we will destroy you completely. They did, Obinna said calmly, or so they believed. But what you don't know is that this conversation has been recorded. Every word, every confession. And at this moment, copies of that recording are being sent to the prosecutor's office, the press, and all your business partners. The color left Chidinma's face. You are lying. Gustavo Ramirez entered through another door, accompanied by 2 agents from the prosecutor's office. He is not lying. Chidinma Salazar, Rodrigo Fuentes, you are both under arrest for fraud, money laundering, and criminal conspiracy. And this time, there is no lawyer who can get you out of this. The chaos that followed was like a symphony of justice. Chidinma screamed threats while they handcuffed her. Rodrigo tried to run, but was tackled by one of the agents. Javier Ojukwu and the other lawyers ran out, trying to disassociate themselves from the disaster. Obinna watched everything with a strange calm. He felt no triumph, he felt no vindication, only exhaustion, and a desperate need to return home to his father. Vicente was waiting for him in the parking lot. The old man smiled with pride. You did well, Olga Obinna. Pa Jeremiah would be proud. Vicente, he is still here, and I am going to make sure every day he has left is filled with love and peace. When they arrived at the mansion, it was past midnight. Obinna climbed silently to his parents' room. Pa Jeremiah was awake, with Ma Ifeoma asleep in a chair next to the bed. Papa, Obinna whispered, I did it. They fell into the trap. Everything is over. Pa Jeremiah smiled, tears running down his wrinkled face. I knew you would, my child. I always knew you would find your way back to what really matters. Obinna knelt beside the bed, taking his father's hand. Now we can focus on getting you that treatment. We have time, Papa. We still have time. But Pa Jeremiah closed his eyes, his breathing weaker. And Obinna knew, with a broken heart, that time was the only thing they could no longer buy. The weeks that followed the fall of Chidinma and Rodrigo were the most intense of Obinna's life. The media covered the scandal tirelessly, a corrupt businesswoman and her accomplice betraying a man who had only trusted the wrong people. But Obinna barely paid attention to the news. His entire world had been reduced to a room on the 2nd floor of his mansion, where Pa Jeremiah fought every day to breathe a little longer. With the accounts unfrozen and the assets recovered, Obinna hired the best specialists in the country. Dr. Mendoza, an internationally recognized cardiologist, evaluated Pa Jeremiah and confirmed what everyone feared. The experimental treatment could give him a few more months, maybe a year if they were lucky, but it wasn't a cure. It was just borrowed time. How much does it cost? Obinna asked without hesitation. Mr. Okoro, we are talking about $500,000, and with no guarantees. I don't care. Do whatever is necessary. But when Dr. Mendoza left, it was Pa Jeremiah who took his son's hand. "No, my child." Obina looked at him, not understanding. "What do you mean by no, Papa? This treatment can save you." "Give me time," Pa Jeremiah corrected gently. "Time in hospitals connected to machines, feeling pain every day. That is not the time I want, son." "Then what do you want?" Obina felt the tears burning his eyes. "Do you want me to stay here watching you die without doing anything?" Pa Jeremiah smiled with that smile. Obina had loved his whole life. "I want you to use that money for something better. I want to spend my final days here, in this house, with my wife and my son, without pain, without machines. Just love. And I want you to know, when I go, that I was the richest man in the world because I had everything that really matters." Ma Ifeoma, who had been listening from the door, entered crying and hugged her husband. "Oh, stubborn old man, always so obstinate. That's why you fell in love with me," Pa Jeremiah joked. And for a moment, Obina saw in his parents the young couple who had met decades ago, when life was difficult, but love was enough. Obina accepted his father's decision, even though it tore his soul apart. He hired nurses specializing in palliative care to ensure Pa Jeremiah wouldn't feel pain. He transformed the master room into a space full of light, with open windows that let in the sun and the birdsong. He brought photographs of the family's entire life, Pa Jeremiah young in his laborer's overalls, Ma Ifeoma sewing next to an oil lamp, Obina as a child chasing chickens in their humble village yard. Vicente moved into a guest room to be nearby whenever they needed him. Monica, who had testified against Chidinma and Rodrigo, came twice a week to bring fresh flowers and share tea with Ma Ifeoma. She had lost her job, but she found something more valuable: redemption and an improvised family that had forgiven her when she couldn't even forgive herself. One afternoon, while Obina was reading his father's favorite book aloud, Don Quixote Pa Jeremiah interrupted him. "My son, there is something I need you to do for me." "Anything, Papa?" "Look in my old suitcase, the one I brought that night. There is a yellow envelope at the bottom." Obina found the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter with his father's trembling script and an old newspaper clipping. The clipping was over 30 years old. It showed a young laborer receiving an award for having saved a child from a collapse at a construction site. "That's you, Papa," Obina whispered, recognizing the young face of Pa Jeremiah in the blurry photograph. "That day I almost died," Pa Jeremiah said. "A wall fell, and a child was trapped. Everyone ran to save themselves, but I heard his cry. I went in and pulled him out just before everything came down. I broke 3 ribs, but the child lived." "Why did you never tell me this?" "Because I didn't do it for recognition, my child. I did it because it was the right thing to do. And that is the legacy I want to leave you. It doesn't matter how much money you have or how much power you reach. The only thing that counts is what you do when no one is watching, how you treat those who cannot give you anything in return." Obina hugged his father, feeling how fragile his body had become, but also how immense his soul was. "Now read the letter," said Pa Jeremiah. Obina unfolded the paper with trembling hands. "My son, if you are reading this, it means my time is up, and that is fine. I have lived a full life, full of love and purpose. I worked with these hands until they bled, but I never felt poor because I had your mother and I had you. I don't write to you so that you feel guilty. Parents forgive even before there is something to forgive. I write to remind you who you really are. You are the child who shared his bread with other children who had less. The youth who studied under the street lamp because we didn't have electricity, but never complained. The man who built an empire, but when he had to choose, chose love. That is my son. Not the one who got lost on the way, but the one who found the way back home. I ask you 3 things. 1. Take care of your mother. She is my heart walking through the world. 2. Do not hold a grudge against those who betrayed you. Forgiveness is not for them, it is for you, so that you can live in peace. 3. Use your success to help others, especially those who, like us, work hard but need an opportunity. I love you more than words can express, and I will be with you always in every good decision you make, in every act of kindness you perform. Your father who adores you, Arturo." Obina finished reading with his face soaked in tears. Ma Ifeoma entered and joined the hug. The 3 formed a circle of love that no betrayal had been able to break. The days turned into a precious routine. Breakfasts prepared by Ma Ifeoma, with the recipes she had perfected over decades. Afternoons where Vicente told stories of when Obina was a child and got into trouble chasing chickens. Nights where the 3 sat together, sometimes talking, sometimes in silence, simply enjoying being together. Obina used his recovered fortune to create the Pa Jeremiah and Ma Ifeoma Okoro Foundation, dedicated to providing scholarships to children of humble workers who wanted to study. The first beneficiary was the daughter of a domestic worker, the second, the son of a laborer. Monica became the director of the foundation, finding in that work the redemption she had sought so much. Every time she handed out a scholarship, she thought of the calls she had blocked and the pain she had caused, and every time she renewed her commitment to do good. One morning, a few weeks later, Obina woke up and knew that something had changed. The silence in the house was different, heavier. He climbed the stairs with his heart in his throat. Pa Jeremiah was in bed with Ma Ifeoma lying next to him, holding his hand. Vicente was sitting in a chair nearby, with silent tears running down his weathered face. "My son," whispered Pa Jeremiah when Obina entered. "Come, sit." Obina knelt beside the bed, taking his father's other hand. "Papa, the doctor said he would come today. We can adjust your treatment." "I don't need treatments anymore, son." Pa Jeremiah smiled with peace. "It is time, and I am ready." "No," Obina cried. "You cannot go. There is still so much I want to do with you. So many breakfasts to share, so many stories to hear, and you have given me more than I ever dreamed, my child. These last days with you have been the greatest gift of my life. I go happy. I go complete." Pa Jeremiah looked at his wife, stroking her face with fingers that barely had strength left. "Ifeoma, love of my life, thank you for every day, for every sacrifice, for giving me the best gift a man can receive, an extraordinary son." "See you soon, old man," cried Ma Ifeoma. "Don't take too long to wait for me up there." Pa Jeremiah smiled and closed his eyes. His breathing became slower, quieter, and then, with his family surrounding him, with the sun entering through the window, illuminating his face in peace, Pa Jeremiah Okoro departed. There was no drama, no pain, just one final soft exhalation like a sigh of relief, as if he could finally rest after a life of hard work and unconditional love. Obina sobbed, clinging to his father's hand, feeling as the warmth left it slowly. Ma Ifeoma kissed her husband's forehead one last time, whispering words of love only she and he would understand. Vicente prayed in silence, thanking life for allowing him to know such a noble man. The funeral was simple, but full of love. There were no crowds of businessmen or corporate pomp, only the people who had really known Pa Jeremiah, neighbors from his old neighborhood, co-workers, families he had helped without expecting anything in return. During the service, Obina spoke with a broken but firm voice. "My father taught me that true success is not measured in bank accounts, but in lives touched, not in accumulated properties, but in shared love. I spent years chasing an illusion of greatness, and I almost lost the only thing that really made me great, the love of my family. But my father gave me something more precious than time. He gave me a second chance. He showed me that it is never too late to choose love over pride, family over ambition, the real over the fake. And although today my heart is broken, it is also full, because I had the privilege of being the son of Pa Jeremiah Okoro, a man who never had much, but who gave everything." After the funeral, life continued, transformed. Ma Ifeoma moved permanently into the mansion, filling every corner with the love only a mother can give. She cooked for Obina, scolded him when he worked too much, and little by little turned that cold house into a true home. Vicente officially became the property manager, but more than that, the grandfather Obina had never had. Together, they built a small chicken coop in the backyard, in honor of the old days. Monica continued directing the foundation with renewed passion. Each scholarship granted was another step toward redemption, and although she would never fully forgive herself for what she had done, she learned to live with it while doing good. Chidinma and Rodrigo were sentenced to 15 years in prison for fraud and money laundering. Obina did not attend the sentencing. It didn't matter anymore. He had learned that revenge does not bring peace, only more bitterness. A year after Pa Jeremiah's departure, Obina was in the garden watching his mother water the flowers when Vicente approached with an old box. "Oga Obina, I found this cleaning the room where your papa slept. I think he wanted you to have it." It was Pa Jeremiah's toolbox, the same tools with which he had built houses, raised walls, fed his family. Inside was a final note. "Son, these tools built our sustenance. Now you build something bigger, a legacy of kindness. I love you, Papa." Obina hugged the box to his chest, feeling his father's presence, as if he had never left. And in a way, he hadn't. He was in every correct decision Obina made, in every act of kindness, in every moment where he chose love over money. That night, Obina sat with his mother on the porch, Maifeoma was knitting a scarf while the stars began to appear in the sky. "Mama, do you think Papa would be proud of me?" Maifeoma stopped knitting and took her son's hand. "My son, your father was always proud of you, even when you were lost, because he knew that eventually you would find the way back. And you found it, child of my soul. You found it." Obinna looked toward the starry sky, feeling a peace he hadn't known in years. He had lost a fortune, gained another, lost friends who turned out to be enemies, and recovered a family that had always been there waiting for him. And somewhere, beyond the stars, he was sure that Pa Jeremiah was smiling because his son had finally learned the most important lesson, that love is the only wealth that no one can take from you, the only inheritance that is really worth leaving. The wind blew softly, swaying the flowers Maifeoma cared for so much, and in that whisper of the wind, Obinna could swear he heard his father's voice. "Well done, my son, well done." And for the first time in a long time, Obinna knew with certainty that everything would be fine, because he had learned that true success is not arriving at the top and staying alone, but arriving with the people you love and building something that lasts beyond your own life. He had lost time, he had lost money, he had lost his father, but he had won something infinitely more valuable. He had found his way back home, and that, in the end, was all that really mattered.